Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us. As we do every week, our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
All right, everybody, it's the Working Fans Podcast with the man they call Dave. And today we have young wrestler Melanie Havoc, who's going to be joining us. And she's going to tell us about her career, her fandom, how she broke in. And first off, Melanie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, and you?
I'm very good. How did you become a fan and aware of pro wrestling?
I became a fan back when I was 5 years old. I was watching wrestling with my dad. So as soon as I was getting into it, and I wanted to be a wrestler, just like this.
Who are some of your favorite wrestlers?
My favorite one is Undertaker and Liv.
All right, awesome. So now you're a fan, and then at some point you decide I'm going to try to do this. So how does that come about? Who ended up training you, and how did the process come of breaking into this wrestling business?
Well, it's a kid dream. I always wanted to be a wrestler, first of all. So in my mind, it wasn't really possible to do it because it's something really hard to do. And I think it was not unreachable. But I think at 25 years old, I started to have regrets, like not doing it. So I went all in and I started to train at 26 in a wrestling school in Montreal. And I started in 12, I was 27, I think. So yeah, I started like it was a kid dream. So, and now I'm doing it. I'm doing my dream.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What school did you go for training?
I started at Torture Chamber in Montreal. And now I am with IWS Dojo in Montreal. And I'm still at the same place.
Awesome. Have there been some people who've really helped you along the way so far?
I could say the coaches that I have right now, they are amazing. They teach the right stuff to know to be good in the business in general. So I would say the coaches right now I have, it's Andrew and Mike Bailey. Like right now he's in Canada, in Montreal, teaching while this COVID stuff. And they really helped me a lot since I started.
Awesome. Now, have you had some matches in empty arena type settings?
Yeah, I did a show for the TV without crowd. It's really, really, really special, I would say. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this like, I want the crowd to be with us because it's just a big part of the show. It's the biggest part of the wrestling, I would say. So yeah, it's really strange. It's really not the same thing. I would say there's something missing that we need when we wrestle. So yeah, it's really different to do it without a crowd.
I'd imagine. I mean, it's funny as a fan. Growing up, you believe in everything, so it doesn't matter. You're hanging on every move, every strike. But as an adult, and you're watching this, I notice like I can watch MMA with no crowd, UFC events, no crowd, and I'm okay. But with the pro wrestling, I'm hanging on the atmosphere, and with no crowd, it's definitely it's missing something.
Yeah, it's missing something. It's a if you do it in the indie scene, it's worse because we don't have like the popularity to do it. When we do it, it's really special. It's missing a big part of wrestling.
Now, one of the things I always hear a lot of old time wrestlers talk about and stuff is ring psychology. Being able to tell a story. Is that something? Would you say is that one of the more challenging aspects of being a pro wrestler?
Yeah, but most of the time, I would say for the people it is, but there's some people that actually are naturally good at doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me personally, it's really hard to do it because I tend to focus more on just plan a match, doing the right things. And so the storytelling is like always at the end of the process, and I should work more on that. And I think it comes with experience, with time. But it's really hard to get to that point where you're able to just tell a story and to have the character in.
Mm-hmm.
When you start, it's really hard, I would say, for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, as a fan and just life experience personally, anything, it's about reps, right? It's just doing over the process over and over again, and then eventually gets better. Now, what about like, say, what would you think came a little easier for you so far? Mic work or the in-the-ring process?
It's really hard for me to express myself, first of all. So I tend to focus more on the in-ring skills matter. And when I will get used to that, I will try to focus more on the mixed skills and doing promos and shit like this. But for now, I'm trying to be just comfortable and just trying to be comfortable doing what I do in the ring. And after I will go with more, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So more reps on the mic stuff, but out of everything, you would say the in-ring skill is what you're taking to the best right now.
Yeah, because it's the promo, it's not my strength right now. And actually to learn to wrestle, it's hard enough. So I think it's better to be comfortable in what I can do better. And when I will get comfortable, I will go with something harder for me, like mix skills, talking on a mic, promos, expressing myself as a character. So I will keep that for the end of the process.
100%. Sounds good. Now, you have a pro wrestling t-shirt. Are you actively involved in helping design your own merch?
I try to go to independent artists. I want to help some artists that are actually doing a really good job. And I have ideas. I just give them the ideas and I let them free to do whatever they want. And if it's cool, I pay them. And actually, I pay them at the beginning first. And I just take that and I do a t-shirt. I want to have like a lot of t-shirt with different kind of style of anything. I don't mind.
Now, have you done some modeling and stuff as well?
Yeah. I was doing modeling before the wrestling, and I was doing that in my free time. I would say for easy 8 years, but it's not something I want to do in my life.
But I imagine between modeling and pro wrestling, physical fitness and eating healthy is a big part of your life.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. Actually, the fitness, it's way more important for me right now than modeling. But mixing the two together, it's always something nice and useful, I think, in my life, in my career that I do. It is really useful.
Now, I'm guessing you speak French and English. Are there any other languages you speak as well?
No, it's just really French and English. And English, I'm trying really hard, but sometimes I know that I have a strong accent. Sorry about that.
No, it's great. It's great. You know what? Personally, for me, I like it when somebody comes on here and brings something a little bit different. So even an accent, I think it's great. So it's fine. But I can tell, I think it's a great thing too. You're capable of speaking both 2 languages right now. That's only going to help you in life. Yes, so that's
Yeah, of
good.
course.
One of the other things I want to ask you about too is there's a saying out there called "embrace the grind." Do you find yourself like that's something you're going to have to do to be successful, right? You're just going to have to work hard, and everything's going to take a lot of time, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Mm.
It's wrestling. It's just hard work. It's paying your dues. It's doing what you have to do, and especially if you want to be in the big companies, you have to work hard. It's grinding every fucking day, for real.
I love it. I love it. You don't hold back. I love it.
No, fuck.
So, what are some of your goals? Because obviously it's tough now. I mean, with restrictions, what are some goals you're hoping to maybe accomplish this year?
Yeah, of course, I don't want to do wrestling just for fun because it's a passion for me. It's a dream. So I have goals. I have goals to travel. I wanna go to Japan because the wrestling over there is awesome. I want to go to the USA, of course. I want to get to the bigger leagues and do something like more big that I'm actually doing right now. I don't want to just stay in my country and just doing like little matches and stuff. And just my goals is to get bigger, of course.
Absolutely. Now, are there any current female wrestlers that you really like that are out there right now that you enjoy watching? And maybe you, as you're getting into business, maybe you watch them differently and you really appreciate certain things they do.
Yeah, I would say right now actually I really like Chris Statlander. I really like the gimmick, the in-ring skills. She's really amazing. She got massive charisma.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm not really a fan. I would say there's a lot of people that I think they are really great, but
Yeah.
I don't have like a favorite one because actually, like you said, I am a wrestler now, so I'm trying to not be a mark anymore.
Right. You start to watch it from a different point of view.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And Statlander's great. I actually saw her live at a couple independent shows. I've seen her do some intergender matches. Have you ever done any intergender matches?
Yeah, of course I did. I think it's my favorite kind of matches, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is because you have to show the world, the people, the crowd, that you can actually compete against a man and not just against women. It's a show, it's a entertainment, and it's I don't know. I think it's fun to do it against the men.
Yeah. Tells a different story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll be about it for today. Is there anything you want to promote? Your Instagram, Twitter, anything coming up? Go ahead. Floor's yours.
Yeah, of course. I have a Facebook page called Melanie Havoc. It's simple. Instagram is the same thing, Melanie Havoc. That's about it. I have my pro wrestling tee store, also called Melanie Havoc. It's the same thing. So that's about it. You can follow me everywhere you want. I'm not on Twitter, by the way, but Instagram, Facebook, pro wrestling tee. Also, you can follow me over there.
All right. Awesome. Melanie, thank you so much for doing the show. It was a pleasure.
I am Zoe Sager, and you're listening to the Working Fans Podcast.
All right, everybody. It's the Working Fans Podcast with the man they call Dave. And today we have a special guest, a young lady, just started wrestling recently, and she's going to tell us about some of her experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Zoe Sager. Zoe, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for doing the show.
No problem.
You're actually the second lady I've interviewed this week who started wrestling from Canada. So this is
awesome.
Yeah, kind of Canadian Ladies Week here. So
love it.
You've been wrestling for about 2 years.
Yes.
Right?
Just over 2 years, like 2.5 maybe.
Before we get into breaking in, what was your fandom? Who were you a fan of? What got you into wrestling? What started you out here?
It's kind of like a long, shortish story. I watched wrestling as a kid because my dad watched it and like his family watched it and like still obsess over it. But then like my family moved a lot. And so when my family moved to one of the cities, we no longer got like the channel that had wrestling. And so I fell out of it for about 5 years up until we moved to Edmonton, which I am now, about 2015. And we got cable again. We were able to watch the channel, and that's when I started kind of getting into it. And I think the biggest reason, like kind of what drew me in to at least want to be a wrestler, was seeing the significant difference that there was in the 5 years that I wasn't watching. When I, like, the last thing that I remember prior to my hiatus of watching wrestling was like the Piggy James storyline, and like it never really vibed with me, and like just, oh, maybe not. But then I came back, and like the first like pay-per-view that I watched was Takeover Brooklyn 2, and there was Asuka and Bailey, and like just watching that match, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, these girls can actually go, and like there were girls before that could actually go, but there was so much not great stuff around it that like it just pushed their abilities off to the side a little bit. And so I saw that, I'm like, oh, maybe this is a thing. And it just like was in the back of my head for like a year. And then finally I'm just like, you know what? There's a school in Calgary. I'll apply. It's only 3 hours away. If I get in, I get in, and then that's what I'll do. But like growing up, it was just like always in my house, pretty much.
So behind the scenes here, a little peek behind the curtain. We recorded a segment earlier today, me and my producer, talking about the top 5 ladies matches of all time, just our opinions.
Yes.
And one of the things we talked about was that like we love the older stuff better. We're a little older, but like women's wrestling's really gotten better recently.
Yes.
So like we're in the hype. I feel the peak of women's wrestling. But what was funny was like we were saying this, like it was literally around 2015 when the whole hashtag Give Divas a Chance movement started. And our favorite match we kept picking, and a buddy of mine who went to that match, Sasha Bailey in Brooklyn, and he said, you know, it's one thing to have the athleticism and the way the matches are put together, but that's the only women's match he ever saw that made him emotionally connected. And they did such a good job with the story and everything that he was just so invested. And he said that, you know, it was like especially Bailey, they were painting the picture of it right. And it's like, so it's funny that inspired you in a lot of ways, that match there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so that was like a year before I started watching, but then I went back like as soon as I like saw Bailey, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like Bailey versus Asuka was amazing. This match is so much better. And like one of my friends, even that's what got her into wrestling, was the Bailey versus Sasha match. And so it's just like crazy.
Just out of curiosity, sidebar here before we get back to you. Are you a big Bailey fan? Do you like her work as a heel? Do you watch some of the stuff, you know, she's doing now?
I am. Like, she's pretty much the reason why I got into wrestling, like her specifically. And even like when I first started, like my first couple months, that's really like working on shows. That's really where I got like a lot of my like motivation for like my character-y thing. And so that was fun.
You kind of light up when you talk about her. That's why I was asking.
Like, it's just, she's so good and I love it. Like, she just keeps on getting better and better and better. At first, like, when she first turned heel, I wasn't quite sure how to, like, take it. Because, like, I'd only seen her as, like, baby face. Like, and so, like, it took a little bit for me to, like, adjust. But very, very big fan of her work now. So,
now, okay, you're going to break into business. And where did you break in? Tell people. Wrestling school. How'd you end up there?
So I trained with Lance Storm in the May 2018 session in Calgary, Alberta, which is super fun, super like intense 3 months, just craziness. Met a lot of super awesome people and still keeping like at least a little bit of touch with most of them. And it's fun. Made some amazing friends that like bond's never going to break, and it's lots of fun. I mean, it's pretty renowned that Lance Storm is considered one of the best trainers in the world. So you happen to be near one of the best trainers. And so if you could give us a little insight to Lance, he seems like he'd be a hard but fair guy, but also approachable. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know how you describe him, but he's definitely like very intimidating off the bat. But like once you like get past, like, it's just his face. He just like he looks scary. That's just what it is. It's not. He's very, very nice, very funny. Like always had us like laughing at least once or twice or lots during training. Very helpful. He took a lot of time and really like wanted to make sure everything was like perfect with everybody, and like really pushed even the people who maybe weren't getting it as quickly to try and like get there, and then they were able to get there, and it was It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was really hard, but it was definitely like very fair, and just like you could tell that like he was super invested in trying to make us as good as we can, especially with the short amount of time that we had with him, because it was only for 12 weeks and just 5 days a week and just like 3-ish hours a day. And so
he seems like a protective dad.
yeah, very much, yeah.
Besides, Lance, everything too, has there been some other people you would say you want to give credit to who are helping you so far in this process?
Yes, definitely. Michael Richard Blaze, who works here in Alberta, he's amazing. After Lance's, about a year later, Force Pro Wrestling opened up a wrestling school here in Edmonton, and I started training with them and under Michael, and just crazy amount of knowledge, like just insane. And then so Force Pro closed in February of this year, and then in June, Top Talent Pro Wrestling opened up, and so Michael moved over to there, and also under the guidance of Heavy Metal, who also works out here in Alberta, and with them, just crazy amount of like strides being made. I'm a totally different wrestler after training with Michael and Metal, but especially Michael, than I could have ever thought that I was going to be. And so cannot give him enough credit to my wrestling.
Well, I think it's great just from talking to you. Obviously, I mean, you're very new to this still, but you still have a lot of enthusiasm, it seems. You're very passionate about this. So that's super cool. One of the things I want to ask you, I like to ask people, especially when you're just starting, is what would you say is a harder aspect to grasp right now? The physical in ring or the mic?
The mic for me. I find promos like really difficult just to like even just formulate words almost. That like I know where I want to go, but I don't know how to get to where I want to go is a lot of my issue. Also, I get like very, very nervous anytime I have to talk. And so like at training and stuff, we'll do like just like little like training matches, but then we'll have to cut a promo before it. And then because really don't like doing them as much as I know that I should.
Right.
Get better at them. It'll delay us like a good 20 minutes in order for me to get a promo out, just because like I like, it'll be like, I have an idea, like I'm prepared to have to cut a promo. And then it's like, Zoe, you're up. And it's like, everything that I thought is just gone out of my head. And just mind goes blank.
I've been there. That's a life thing sometimes.
Yes.
I will say, as some life advice, not even wrestling, one thing I've learned the older I got is embrace the uncomfortableness and just jump into it. Right? It's hard. It takes reps.
It's very, very
ultimately,
hard.
Right?
Yeah.
But,
one thing that also helped is Thaddeus Archer. He does like an arch report for Prairie Wrestling Alliance, and it's just like in the backstage bits of the promotion in a bit, and he gets me to do promos lots on that show just to help with the show. And also like it really helps when it's, I find on video, when it's, you can have as many takes as you want, it's a little bit less pressure than say you're in the ring and then you mess up and
yeah.
And then you can't start over. We're live, pal, but
I use that all the time. God bless you. I'll tease co-host all the time. But anyway, a funny story. I saw this, but this was more about the in-ring. Kevin Owens told a story once. The first day he went to a wrestling school, I think it was Kevin when he was younger, and it just hurt so bad that the ring they were working on, especially to an older ring, he could not do it. And he thought about quitting after all this. And then he went home, and I think he found like these softer, like almost like mattresses. He put like this little ring together, and he was practicing all the moves, taking all the. So he got more comfortable with it. And then when he went back, he at least had that kind of edge a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds like not a lot of fun.
No.
Situation. Mattresses are not, bumping is not fun.
Yeah, some of the old school guys I talked to too, especially you hear some of the rings they worked on. It's quite scary. You know what? I got to be honest. You sound like such a natural baby face. Have you played a heel though?
I have. I was fortunate enough to do a Tony Candela tour in 2019, and on that tour I was heel all the way through, and it it was different because that was the first time I had ever worked heel up until that point, and I was only 6 months in. And luckily, the girl who I was working with, Kat Von Hees, she's been in the business for a long time, and she's who I've been working with up until that point. And so because I was with somebody who I was comfortable with, I was able to like almost learn, not even almost, learn a lot from just trial and error, especially. And then there are other two girls. Sexy Samantha is an awesome heel. And so I just like followed her and watched her matches a lot and just tried to like pick it up as I went in the short 2 weeks, as well as like a couple little spot shows, just when they need a heel. And so I've done that, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. It seemed like you really kind of enjoy playing the heel, though, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's different. I find I have fun playing babyface and heel, but I find I'm able to have like, it's more like an open sense of fun. And just like, there's no worries with being a heel, because if I mess up, as long as I don't show my, like make a face saying like telling that I messed up, people aren't going to know because I'm not doing a whole lot. Right. And so it's fun. And all the people that I've been heels for are awesome baby faces, and so it makes it really easy.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Now, actually, I don't know if you, I was told, I think it was Ricky Mortensen, one of the things about being a great baby face is one of the things you can do is like you try to find somebody in the crowd to connect with. So like when there's a spot and they're beating you down, you try to like look like you're reaching out to them almost. Yeah. You ever like, do you study old stuff like that? Is that something like that helps, or?
I don't study that specifically. I've had recently, just with training a lot more than I have had shows, I'm finding that I'm not selling the same way as I was on a show, which I need to stop doing. And so like I'm more so looking to see like how they sell certain things in order to be in like different situations and why they're doing it in different situations. If it's for the crowd, if it's for camera angles, if it's just that's how they sell it, and just trying to figure out like they do this, let me try that and see if it like vibes with me and continue doing that sort of thing, and just trying a bunch of different little things. And is mostly what I'm looking for now when I'm trying to study things. Just looking for like the little things that most people wouldn't notice is a lot, that even like fans who don't know, in the back of their head they know, because like the people who are really good, they do this, they just don't know.
Right.
Sort of things.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So obviously, you know, you're in this process, you know, you're learning a lot of stuff. Now where COVID hits,
yes,
and kind of slows things down a lot. Have you been doing any like empty arena shows at all too? Have you just done shows with small fans? What's been going on now with this going on?
So I did one empty arena show that we filmed like right before everything shut down. But then since that, I haven't had a show. So that was filmed in April, I want to say. And since then I haven't done shows, which has sucked. Just there've been a couple of shows running, like one promotion's been running in the city consistently, or was up until like super hard restrictions came down here in Alberta. And then there was another promotion who was coming in and out. I chose, just like personal reasons, I wasn't super sure how shows were going to go. And so I chose to opt out of doing any shows that I was offered just through the pandemic, and just to be cautious. I was training up until the hard restrictions and our training building had to close. I was training every single day in the gym and in the ring. And so trying to do that and just trying to keep sane and trying to learn as much as I can, and trying to almost just try to learn how to like work properly, without having fans there, and making it be able to have the same caliber matches as I was having in front of fans, and even better without the fans. And so like, and then trying to remember like, oh, with fans, like it'll be even better because there'll be a reaction and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I say take a positive out of a negative, right? I mean, You're getting more reps behind the scenes, training at least a little more. And even the small time working in front of no fans will hopefully sharpen you by the time it comes back to,
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I'm sure it's going to all be, unfortunately, yeah, you're going to probably get back out there. But I mean, hey, whatever. It's all part of the learning process. And you're going to have the distinction of learning at one of the most probably unique times ever in the wrestling business.
I'm not excited to have the nerves of being on shows again, but I'll be that first couple of shows back is going to be like starting first show back, first show ever. It's going to be interesting.
Now, did you ever do anything performance-wise before the wrestling business? Like any kind of drama or anything?
I did drama for like 2 years in like middle school and high school, but then ended up dropping it because I didn't want to do a project. And so I wouldn't necessarily count that just because it's been so long ago. So not really, no.
No, okay. Nothing that was like you felt really prepared you for this. Then this is something.
No, I like even when I signed up for Lances, I knew it was in, and then like 2 months before, one of the promotions or one of the schools in Edmonton had like a mini camp, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll go to that because I know I'm gonna do it. Just kind of like see what I'm getting into before I actually like drive down to Calgary after. But then I didn't end up making it because I went to a live event. So, yeah.
Now, one of the other things I'm just curious about, I mean, you're still new. Have you been fortunate enough to avoid any injuries yet? Or have you had?
I haven't had any like major injuries at all.
That's good.
Like one concussion and a couple of broken noses, but that's about it.
Well, that's not bad. I mean, that's not bad.
Most of them were on me, so actually all of them I think were on me, so it's fine.
That's probably how it happened. Now, is character development something you're still like probably working on right now at this point?
A little bit, yeah. Trying to like, I kind of like went through like a little bit of like an evolution just with like who I was as a person coming into the wrestling business. I was very, very quiet, very, very shy for my first like year in wrestling, and it took a long time for me to like open up even to like other wrestlers. And so once that started to happen, like my character started to change a little bit just because I changed. I'm just a little bit more confident, a little bit different. I'm thinking of maybe not even fully changing it up, but more so once shows are back. Don't know what it'll be, but we'll see. I'm more so just kind of want to be me.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to wrestlers, even a few comedians recently, and one thing common with comedians and wrestlers both will say that the best characters, or in comedians' case, the best acts, are all extensions of yourself. So, yeah, trying to find yourself sometime can probably be like the challenging part. But
yes, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I would say, I mean, one thing I'm sure you probably know is just, right now when you're in that struggling phase learning, it seems like no matter what the field, you can gain a lot of respect and you can win people over with hard work and a good attitude. It's amazing how well that goes, so.
For sure.
I'm sure. Have you worked with anybody? You don't have to name names, but have you seen people where you're like, whoa, like probably shouldn't have said that, or like any bad attitude? Or you've been fortunate.
I've seen a little bit. I tried to like distance myself from that sort of stuff, just because I don't know. It makes me feel weird being around it. It's almost like I'm being associated with it, even though it's not necessarily me. I've seen a couple people, especially like when it comes to training things, and it's just like, oh, maybe like don't. Yeah. And like on the same hand, like I've had days where it's just like I can't, and sometimes I will end up acting like saying things in a way that I shouldn't, or just saying things that I shouldn't. And sometimes it's just like it's a very hard business to be in. Sure. And so sometimes like got to take things with a grain of salt, which can be difficult. It's just when those people like are constantly doing it, and it's like maybe don't.
Yeah, I imagine you got to develop thick skin sometimes. Yes. Yeah, I understand that. I got red hair and allergies when I was a kid, so developing thick skin, you learn, and it's a good trait in life. Believe me. What about promotion? Do you have any merch? Is there anything you're working on, or how's that go?
I don't have any merch. I was looking into getting some, like right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and just kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. So I don't have any merch personally. I know like our school has, like our training school has merch, and that's what's kind of paying the bills at the moment for our wrestling school, which just while we're not able to do it. Right now I work primarily for a promotion, Prairie Wrestling Alliance here in Alberta. That's pretty much my home. I'll also go out to Prairie Pro Wrestling in Saskatchewan fairly often when they're running shows. I've done a couple of shows for Real Canadian Wrestling just on the like outlying towns and cities in Edmonton. I've worked for Canada's Wrestling Elite based in Winnipeg, but then they tour around a lot. So those are like the main ones that I've worked for so far. Hopefully I'll get more. It'll be fun.
I mean, there's a vaccine out, and hopefully things are going to start opening up more. And I think it's realistic to think that, you know, unless something takes a wild turn, we should be looking at hopefully more filled arenas this year.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully.
One other thing I want to ask you now. You've had, obviously, you're very young in your career, but have you had any intergender matches yet?
I have. Actually, in Prairie Pro Wrestling, that's all I do. I'm the only female on the roster. But I love it. A lot of my best matches are intergendered matches, and it's so much fun. You can do so much more, not even so much more with them, but you can do a lot with them that you can't always do with women. Some of my favorite matches are with Jack Pride. Just awesome. Just from the first match that we had, just went perfect, and it was one of those like calm before the matches that I get very, very rarely, but I know like it's gonna go off without a hitch when it happens. Just like I'm only nervous because like I'm not nervous, sort of things. Right. It's lots of fun. Yeah,
actually, and you know, funny side note, I think I was telling you before we did this, I had interviewed another young Canadian female wrestler, and I asked her the same question about intergender wrestling, and she's probably maybe just a little bit ahead of you, 3-4 years. And she said the same thing. Her favorite matches so far have been the intergender matches and stuff like that. So
just it's a lot of fun. What I was able to have a match with my trainer, like really on into him training me. So like I didn't really know him at that time. Now we're like super good friends, and it wasn't my first intergender match. I'm lying, but like I had that match, and like it was the first match where I realized, oh, I can do this. Like I can do all these crazy things. Like this is how you structure like a complicated match. It's just I was thinking of it wrong the whole time. It was a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah, I know. That's one of the things I always tell people is like, especially the older I get, the more I realize I didn't know, because you start learning different ways to do different things. Yeah, that's fun.
Find it like watching back matches, like now, like after like learning so much at training, I'm like, I thought this was good. I can't, like, in what world, like, doing that wrong.
Well, you have a great attitude. I wish you nothing but luck. What about anything you want to promote, social media, or maybe even possible events if anything's coming up?
No events that I know of. And social media, you can find me on Instagram at Zoe_Sager, and then at Twitter at SagerZoe, because somebody stole my username on whichever one we wanted to say.
All right. Well, thank you for doing the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Fans, welcome back for another week of the 531. Damn, we sound silky smooth, brother. We got songs back. We don't got no stock intros. We made it, baby.
We're back in the big leagues, baby, and it's going to be Ladies' Day on 531. So all you nasty ladies out there, get ready. We got a top 5 women's matches of all time.
Now, I think Rob Dolly might be happiest about this is now that we got the soundboard back, we'll be doing better intros. You won't be hearing the same old shit. And, I mean, Dave, you got us some ladies interviews this week. So you wanted to do a 5-3-1 on top women's matches, and I'd say we got a pretty good response back.
Yeah, baby, we're ready to kick this off, man. I mean, it was interesting because some people struggled with this list. Like, I talked to a few people, like, they said they were going to get back to me. They never did because they're like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of good matches there. I don't know where to begin, you know?
I think a lot of the problem, too, is a lot of the top-notch ladies' matches are more recent. Like, there's been a ton within the last 5 years, and that's where I think a lot of the responses are going to come. We're going to get some older ones, but I mean, just the women's revolution that WWE's had and what the indies have done for women's wrestling have upped the stock of it considerably, I think.
I 1,000% agree with you. No, I actually was thinking about this the other day kind of randomly, how when I think about my favorite time in pro wrestling, it's usually a while ago. It's like the 80s, it's the 90s. That's one of my best stuff. But when I think about my favorite women's matches specifically, most of it is all recently because women's wrestling got a lot better the last.
Yeah, it didn't make my list, but I was watching a Sherry Martel versus Candy Devine match from AWA, and it's just that was one of the rare good ladies matches in the 80s. I think women's wrestling had to get over that stink in the 80s of glow and still being treated almost as like an addition onto the shows, sort of like how midget wrestling or like bringing in Andre the Giant was more of an attraction.
100%. I will say this, though. It's funny because if you look at one of the criticism of people like, we'll say Disco Inferno, there's like a lot of modern wrestlers, they'll talk about how they don't throw good punches. It doesn't look like a fight as much. Now, I will say this. Women's wrestling is so much better now because it's gotten so much more athletic and they get more time and there's better stories. But I bet if you go back and you watch that Sherry Martel, Candy Devine match you're talking about, that thing probably looks like a fight. Because I remember Sherry Martel and especially Moole and some of those girls back in the heyday, they looked like they were punching a hole in your chest and they were picking you up by your hair. It looked like they were going to like rip it out of your skull.
Yeah, getting to see any of those old Sherry Martel matches, it reminds you that she's so much more than just the valet we saw for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the first list I got here is from Sid Douglas. He's got Trish Stratus versus Charlotte Flair, Evolution 2019. Alundra Blaze versus Bull Nakano, Raw after SummerSlam in 94. He's got Elimination Chamber 2019. He just said Shayna destroys everybody. Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong, Final Resolution 2008. And then Megumi Kudo versus Shark Tsuchiga, No Rope Exploding Barbed Wire match.
Holy shit. That's something you don't hear about every day.
No, I'm going to have to look that up because that sounds like it'd be a hell of a match.
What was the Impact one you had there? Awesome Kong and Gail Kim?
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't notice them when I made a list I got, and in retrospect, TNA knockout positions probably should have made more lists. I will say the issue with that might be that TNA wasn't as exposed as well during the time of some of this stuff here.
No, there's one other TNA match that I see, or Impact match, and that's due to, I think, a recent revamp in not only their knockouts division, but also a little bit of the exposure they're getting, and maybe the people running the show right now.
Before I get to my list, I want to include a text I got from Scott when I asked him about this. Old Scott from Ballstown. He wrote, Bayley versus Banks, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 5 times. And then we had a little banter back and forth. When he basically said to me, he said, I'm sticking with my answer. I almost gave an honorable mention and shout out to Sexy Star versus, you can help me out with this name, it's Lucha Underground,
Mariposa, yep.
Mariposa, okay. Because I quit, but I think Bayley and Sasha was the only women's match that had me feeling actual emotion watching it live. So before I read my list, I just wanted to bring that up because that's an interesting quote, because obviously the women's wrestling has really come on strong the last few years, but without the proper storytelling, sometimes it's hard to get emotionally invested in that match. And one thing I thought about that Brooklyn match, we'll talk more about in the end, I'm sure. They did such a great job with the video packages leading up to it and really just telling that story.
Yeah, I was there with Scott too, so I can attest to that. And that was a hell of a match. You'll hear it on my list, definitely. Sexy Star versus Mariposa. Mariposa played by cheerleader Melissa, well-known indie wrestler. hell of a match. Sexy Star, also a boxer and an MMA fighter. So it's good to see those other fight styles making that inroad to ladies wrestling as well.
Now, I want to read off Mikey and Fred's list first from Facebook because something interesting I noticed compared to that first list you mentioned. He also had Alundra Blaze versus Bull Nakano, SummerSlam 94, which I was surprised to see that make multiple lists now. It was a good match.
Well, he had the Raw after SummerSlam, Sid Douglas.
Oh, we did? Okay, yeah.
Still,
right.
I mean, still good series of matches.
Yeah, it was. Now, to get to the rest of his list, though, he had Trish versus Lita 2004. I believe that might have been when they headlined Raw. Sasha versus Bayley, TakeOver Brooklyn. And Trish versus Mickie James, Mania 22. And Charlotte versus Becky versus Rousey, WrestleMania 35. Now, I think for historical significance, it's a very good match to be included. I don't know in terms of, it wasn't a bad match, but like a lot of these other matches I find a little more exciting. But when you talk about this historical significance, it's kind of hard to trump that match.
Yeah, I think historical significance has to play into it just because of this is the age where women's wrestling is finally getting its due. And even if it's not the greatest match, it is a great match for that reason. So it's kind of maybe the work rate wasn't necessarily where you'd look, but the storytelling puts it over the top, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard when you're dealing with three-ways, and also I believe this is where Ronda had hurt her hand in the middle of the match, too. But, yeah, solid performance, and the historical aspect of it is through the page.
The next list I got is from Jesse from New Hampshire. He's got Lita versus Trish, Raw 12/6/04, so that must be the headlining night. Trish versus Victoria, Survivor Series 02. Trish versus Mickie James, WrestleMania 22. Charlotte versus Ripley, WrestleMania 36. And Charlotte versus Becky versus Sasha, WrestleMania 32.
Interesting that Charlotte and Ripley made it on that list, too. Very recent to see Rhea Ripley on this list.
I think that match really did a lot, and I mean, it was a chance for what at the time it was the NXT Women's Champ going up against Charlotte, and that was a big look.
Also, Mickie and Trish made his list as well as Mikey and Fred's list, that WrestleMania 22 match. So that match gets them interested. Now that match is interesting too because that's a match that forever is edited on WrestleMania because that's the one where they were doing where Mickie was like obsessed with Trish. It was time for soccer, and then a match. And there's a part where Mickie is like kind of grabbing her in her lower region, we'll say. And this is the part that's been edited though. Like, Trish kind of, backed away like all shocked, but then Mickie looks at the camera and licks her hand. It's like, well, no longer, you can find it on YouTube. It's hilarious. But yeah, you can't, it's actually edited out on all of WWE home video stuff. So interesting.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I'll go with my next list. I got Mike Flynn. He's always got lists for us. He's got Charlotte versus Natty takeover. Probably the first takeover, I think, too. Asuka and Ember Moon, another takeover. Becky versus Charlotte versus Asuka, TLC. Sasha versus Bayley, Hell in a Cell. And Charlotte versus Becky, Evolution. He added to me, admittedly, I never seek out women's wrestling. If it's on a show, I'll watch, and I often really enjoy it, but it's definitely very low on my pecking order for better or worse. Like, I'm sorry if that offends anyone. He's not trying to offend anyone. But he said, but it's one of the few things WWE has done better in recent years. I still don't understand, though, why Vince and most women wrestle with their hair down. It's a small thing, but it drives me insane. No other sport does a woman have that in. So I thought that was interesting commentary. And obviously in a sport, yeah, you're going to probably see most women with their hair up like an MMA fight, boxing, but wrestling, I think, obviously, whether people are still trying to sell, we're still trying to, entertain, and a lot of these girls, are kind of putting out, a model-like performance as well.
Yeah. I wouldn't say he would really be offending anyone with that comment because, it wasn't until lately that women's wrestling has almost been appointment viewing. Since the women's revolution and what we talked about with the indies really put it over, it was always kind of like a sideshow thing. And now it's, I mean, I think they deserve more ladies-only pay-per-views. You've got women's-only promotions, Shine, Shimmer, that people check out. That's where a lot of this quality ladies content is coming from. I think it's just going to take a couple more Evolution pay-per-views to make it as front and center as it should be. I think you could do a ladies show, but like AJ has said before, he doesn't think there should be a PWI Ladies 100. They should just be lumped in with the 500.
I agree, but I also think Women's Evolution was one of my favorite pay-per-view events from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was definitely something. Now,
I think what I liked about it too is it broke up the staleness, like because the men are so exposed, the storylines so exposed. One thing about the women's pay-per-view was you had different matches with focus on it, and you brought in different people from different, brands and brought back past talent. It was such a fresh concept, especially only doing it once a year. And now that it hasn't been done for a couple of years, I kind of hope they bring it back. I'd like to see them give the roster, some of the roster reps, let their storylines breathe and maybe put the focus on the women just for 1 month. I mean, I know at some point our goal is just to get everything integrated, but honestly, I don't know. It freshens up the show a lot to me when they do something like that.
Definitely. Now, the next list I have is from Zach St. John. He's got Bayley versus Sasha, Brooklyn TakeOver. Asuka versus Ember Moon, Brooklyn 2017. Charlotte versus Natalya, TakeOver 2014. Asuka versus Bayley, Brooklyn 2016. And Charlotte versus Becky, Evolution.
Yeah, Charlotte and Becky from Evolution, and that Sasha Bayley match are making a lot of lists here, is what I'm noticing.
Definitely. And on top of that, just Brooklyn takeovers and takeovers in general are featuring a lot of lists. So that says something about NXT's contribution to this ladies' revolution.
They kicked it off. I mean, really. I mean, the main roster was not doing it, really. It was like Triple H and the NXT brand that was really setting the standard for women's wrestling until all the girls came up with, they brought up 3 or 4 initially. And if you remember, that was all after they put some 5-minute or 3-minute match on Raw. I want to say one of the Bellas went to somebody. And there was a big hashtag Give Divas a Chance movement. And that's when, it was like almost a week or two after, we had Sasha, Charlotte, and let's say Becky all come up at the same time with Paige.
Now, I don't know if this was exactly in 2015, but me and my brother went to the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and then we went to the Raw the next night. And I almost think that the Give Divas a Chance movement might have started there, or that was where one of the early videos was, and it was just wild to be there at a moment like that.
Well, I will say this, that TakeOver Brooklyn match, Sasha was already on the roster. She came back for that match. That was part of the story, and that was 2015. So,
wow.
Now, I'm going to get to Randy. Randy Asuka. He's got a list. Joe's not going to be surprised if he kicks off his list with, but ready for the last thought on this list.
Tessa versus Sammy.
Nope. Tessa versus Mercedes Martinez. Iron Woman match. Rise 10 Insanity. All right. Gail Kim versus Taryn Terrell. Last knockout standing match. TNA Slammiversary 2013. Paige versus Emma. NXT Women's Championship match at NXT Arrival. Sasha Banks versus Bayley. NXT Women's Championship match from TakeOver Brooklyn 2015, and then Tessa Blanchard versus Gail Kim, Impact Wrestling Rebellion 2019. Randy might have gave us the most in-depth list here out of everybody so far, so props to Randy. He also, when I told him I appreciate your list and you're coming through, Randy, because he always comes through with us. He said, yeah, it's a tough list. Those are the matches that meant to me. I'm assuming meant most, but yeah, so.
And it's a little surprising that there weren't too many WWE matches. Impact stuck out a lot more on that list to me.
Yeah, you can tell Randy is a huge fan of women's wrestling. This is definitely where, his heart lies.
Definitely. It was almost the variety of list that I feel like AJ might have. Trying to get something from a promotion like Rise and paying attention to the Knockouts division, because I don't think they're going to be highlighted on necessarily a ton of lists, and their contribution to women's wrestling is huge.
Except for AJ would have Googled the list about 5 minutes before we started, and Randy's was self-genuine. Shout out to AJ, who's probably listening to this. I want to drop.
Yeah, did AJ give us a list?
He did not. Well, I asked him last night before recording, and we were supposed to talk about it again And that has not happened yet. Behind the scenes, me and AJ are working something for the podcast today that hopefully will come through. It hasn't. We're in the midst of it right now, but so I've not got my list.
Yeah, we're not going to bring up the name of it because we don't want the fans to get their hopes up. But
we'll know soon enough.
Yeah, I was going to say. You'll tell by the tone of the wrestling interviews how it went. I'm going to bring you my list next. I've got Bayley versus Sasha, take over Brooklyn. Deonna Purrazzo versus Jordan Grace, 30-minute Iron Woman match. Sasha versus Charlotte, the first women's Hell in a Cell. Charlotte versus Bayley versus Sasha, WrestleMania 32. And I got Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley, WrestleMania 36.
My man, I liked that you included Purrazzo and Grace in that 30-woman Iron Man match there. Something recent.
Yeah, I was very excited for it when it was announced, and I had to go back to watch it this morning, and I think I enjoyed it just as much as the first time I saw it.
She's really starting to impact. It's funny, NXT does such a good job with wrestlers, especially female wrestlers, but one that they dropped the ball on was Purrazzo. I don't feel like they showcased her enough well there at all, and then here she is an Impact now, making the stride that she is.
Yeah, Wrestler of the Year for Impact, and I believe Knockout of the Year for Impact, so that's pretty impressive.
Good for her. All right, I'm going to close this down then, my man. I also got Bayley versus Banks from Brooklyn TakeOver. I also got Bayley versus Banks from the rematch they did, the Iron Woman match. I believe it was in Houston after that, at the next TakeOver.
That was awesome.
That's also the one where Sasha broke up Izzy's sign and actually made Izzy cry in the crowd for that. So I always remember that. Becky versus Charlotte versus Rousey for historical significance, WrestleMania 35. I felt the need to include that. Becky versus Charlotte from Evolution. I'm kind of surprised how many times Becky made my list. Not that she's not a great wrestler, but I don't tend to think of her as like the best matches of all time, But yeah, she made two of my list. And Bayley versus, not Bayley, Shayna Baszler versus Io Shirai at TakeOver 20 in Bridgeport that we went to, which was just such an exciting atmosphere seeing that match live.
Definitely now. Obviously, like you said, Bayley versus Sasha made a lot of lists.
Yep.
Would you say Charlotte versus Becky made just as many? Charlotte versus Becky versus Sasha?
I think Charlotte versus Becky from the Women's Evolution was definitely on point list.
Okay.
So I think that has to make there. I feel like I want to reward Randy with something here because he gave us such an in-depth list. I want to throw one of his matches on here, even though I'm probably just going to boot it out. Because I think these other two are going to be there.
Pick the match that you think has the most strength for an argument, and we'll see if it does get booted out of the top three.
The thing is, I didn't see some of these matches, though. He did such a good job going in depth. It's hard to go. I can't include something that I haven't seen, though. That's the problem. So he went really deep on us. I'll just give him a special shout out again. Thank you for including this. I'm going to, I'm going to go a little old school. I'm going to go with a match I was surprised they made a couple people's lists. All right, and you can put it. You can veto this. Bull Nakano versus Alundra Braze. Either one. I don't care. I'll go to SummerSlam '94.
Yeah, I would have. I think that just deserves a place in there for historical significance. It was probably in the deepest of our fandom, probably the best ladies match we saw up until the women's revolution. Unless we were lucky enough to catch like the spare Sherry Martel match. But Alundra Braze versus Bull Nakano, that was.
Here's the thing. I'm just going to boot it anyway. Because at the end of the day, like, to me, the women's matches we're getting right now in particular, especially when done right, I mean, with the story and everything like that, I mean, WWE does have the marquee talent right now. Impact's got a lot of good talent, but I don't feel like they're profiled enough. You know what I mean? So it's like we're just getting these matches that are on a bigger level, at least right now. That could change in the next few years. But I think Bayley and Sasha, Brooklyn, and Becky versus Charlotte Evolution are great semifinals. But to me, man, I think Scott summed this up best at the beginning of the podcast. Scott only gave us one list this week, but what he said, it was the women's match I got emotionally invested in. I want to add on this. I don't get emotionally invested in a lot of matches anymore. That's one of the things that sucks about getting older when you watch so many stuff. You view things from a different angle. You view things from like, oh, this is entertaining. Oh, I notice the crowd not being there, right? I like the whole atmosphere. I like the show. Very seldom do I get lost in something. The only thing I've gotten lost in recent years are Dustin Rhodes AEW event they did, and now going back to 2015, that Sasha Bailey match, because they told such an amazing story of how Bailey and Sasha were friends, but also Bailey never quite being able to quite do it at the time. Sasha got called up to the main roster, and Bailey came close, and she just can't make it. And it was the real story was being told, and the fans were starving for that match, and they were starving for Bailey to finally get her due. And they told such a great story going back and forth, and eventually Bailey wins. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's easily got to be the winner. And Dave, you know what the music means. Bailey versus Sasha, top women's match. If you disagree, find us in the comments. Let us know what you thought stuck out as a ladies match. But I think it's going to be pretty universal of fans of wrestling nowadays that this will take the top match. So guys, thank you for joining us for another week of the 531 and the Working Fans podcast, and we will talk to you later.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, Working Fans Wrestling _pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.